Good evening, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching the main edition of World News. Today we'll talk about the possible escalation of the Israeli-Iranian conflict and the US presidential election, but first, let's take a look at today's headlines. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that his army has received its first batch of F-16 fighter jets. Anti-immigration and anti-racism protesters have taken to the UK streets for the sixth day in a row. Poland will soon be sending an astronaut into space for the second time in its history. Sławomir Uznański is scheduled to begin training in Houston on Monday ahead of his 2025 space mission. And we begin with the Middle East. Hezbollah says it has launched dozens of rockets at Israel from southern Lebanon amid soaring tensions in the region. This comes as Iran and its allies are preparing a response for the assassination of Hamas political leader, which they have blamed Israel for, stoking fears of a broader regional war.
Hezbollah launched several rocket attacks on Saturday, targeting Israeli communities and IDF posts along the border. Hezbollah is an Iran-backed militia and political movement based in Lebanon. On Sunday, in response, Israel carried out strikes of its own on southern Lebanon. Tensions in the region have been high since Hamas's top political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, was killed in Iran's capital, Tehran.
Such assassination in the heart of the Iranian capital, almost during the ceremony of presidential inauguration, is also a huge blow to the Iranian reputation in the Middle East.
Iran has vowed severe retaliation against Israel, which it has blamed for the death of Ismail Haniyeh. Israel has not commented on the matter. Haniyeh was a guest of honor at the swearing-in ceremony of the newly elected Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian. U.S. President Joe Biden said on Thursday that the killing of Haniyeh was not helpful in reaching a ceasefire in the Gaza war.
It's not helped.
Israel's society has been growing increasingly frustrated with Netanyahu's handling of the war, including the increasing tensions with Hezbollah in Lebanon. Western officials fear that Hezbollah could play a key role in retaliation for Haniyeh's death, which in turn could spark a serious Israeli response. Experts point to possible scenarios on how the situation may unfold.
The first one is a massive combined and coordinated attack of all organization being part of the so-called axis of evil or axis of resistance, as Iranian government call it. Second scenario is that Iran will conduct a terrorist attack on Israeli institutions abroad or prominent Israeli politician within Israel.
The third and least probable scenario, according to experts, are Iranian strikes on Israeli military installations from Iranian soil. The US, the UK, Sweden, France, Canada, and Jordan urged their citizens to leave Lebanon as soon as possible, as a growing number of flights are cancelled or suspended at the country's only commercial airport in Beirut. Poland has also advised its citizens not to travel to the region.
It has been a day of chaos in Israel as 2 Israeli civilians were killed and 2 others were wounded in a terrorist stabbing attack in central Tel Aviv this morning. At the same time, a barrage of at least 5 rockets was fired from the southern Gaza Strip at the Ashdod area in southern Israel. And now we're going live to our correspondent in Tel Aviv, Diana Skaya, for the latest updates. Hello, Diana. So what's the recent situation after the stabbing attack, and is Israel prepared for the possible attack from Iran?
Good evening, Marcek. Well, it's definitely quite a tenseful situation, particularly now. I mean, at this point, the people around Holon and Bat Yam, where I'm actually located, are a little bit fearful of being outside, given the fact that the attack happened this morning. Currently, right now, before I get to the attack, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is convening right now a cabinet to talk about what steps should be done as they await this presumably attack from Iran and its proxies. What we're seeing on the screen right now is actually in Bat Yam earlier today, how police officers located hours after he committed this stabbing attack. It was a Palestinian young man from the West Bank who came in with no papers he crossed the fence into Israeli territory, where in Holon he stabbed 2 people dead in five, of course, different locations, wounded others. Some of them are still in hospital right now. This is a central location, bright and early day as this happens. Now, besides the fact, Maciek, that people here, Israelis here, are simply waiting on almost this attack to happen from Iran's proxy, which, by the way, in the earlier report from our colleague Alex, it's really about experts say one thing, but we never know when this is happening. It's also a part of Iran's Islamic Republic of Iran's possible psychological terror taking place. As to now, the word is that they would attack on the next Jewish holiday, which is to be about on the 12th to 13th of August, called Tish B'Av, a day of mourning for the Jewish people. This is when they're expected. However, currently, right now, all flights, almost no flights are flying into Israel except Israeli airlines. Flights in Beirut are canceled. There's, of course, many people at the airport trying to get out here. Personally, in Israel, the only flights that are operating, of course, are Israeli airlines and Cyprus Airlines and Greece. However, from that attack, of course, he was shot dead by the police officer. He had approached, apparently, a police officer with a gun. While he committed these attacks, apparently he wasn't usually what Israel is usually known for. They shout Allahu Akbar before they conduct any attack. He was very silent until he approached the police officer with the knife, with the dagger. This is when the police officer shot him and killed him. Now, this is something very usual, and it's particularly after October 7. Many of these attacks are ongoing across Israel. The Palestinians, of course, doing it in their call, of course, against the Israeli response to October 7 in the Gaza Strip, Maciek. And of course, as Israelis here still await this imminent attack from either to be launched by Tehran itself or through its proxies in Iraq, Syria, Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, and of course, we of course heard the booms today, explosions in Ashdod. This was still Gaza, Hamas launching Gaza rockets onto southern Israel, the IDF operating deep into Gaza. However, Hamas somehow yet managing to send out those rockets. Maciek?
That was Diana Skaya reporting from Tel Aviv, Israel. Thank you so much, Diana. Of course, stay safe. And we're moving on to the UK now. Protesters are continuing in the UK following the mass stabbing in Southport, which left 3 children dead and several others wounded. Far-right fueled violence has swept across several British cities over the weekend, leaving multiple people hospitalised and more than 90 arrested.
Far-right protesters took to the streets in Manchester on Saturday, shouting anti-Islam chants and anti-immigration slogans. The group was confronted by the police and a counter-protest organised by anti-racism activists. Far-right protesters also gathered in Liverpool, where the scene soon turned violent. 2 police officers had to be hospitalised, one with a suspected broken nose and another with a suspected broken jaw, as chairs, bricks, bottles and flares were thrown at them. Many Liverpool residents gathered to protect the city's mosque from the violence.
We're here today just showing solidarity with the Muslim community. We feel terrified at the moment, the threats that are being made, and I think it's not what this city is about.
I want to see fascists on our street, that's why I'm here tonight. Them people who turned up the other night, it was so disrespectful. 3 little girls have been murdered, loads of people stabbed, and they come on and all they're interested in wanting to kill people and burn a mosque down. They're not welcome on our streets. That's why I'm here tonight.
Immediately after the attack in Southport, far-right activists and outlets spread claims alleging that the attacker was a migrant. Violent protests have been taking place across the country since then, leading to widespread backlash. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced a new task force to tackle the issue.
It is obvious to me, and I think obvious to anybody looking in, that so far as the far right is concerned, this is coordinated, this is deliberate, this is not a protest that has got out of hand. It is a group of individuals who are absolutely bent on violence.
In order to stop speculations that the attacker was a Muslim migrant, the judge in the Southport stabbing case decided not to conceal his identity. Axel Ruda Kubana was born in Cardiff and grew up in Banks, but the revelation of his British roots seems to have done little to quell the unrest. He has been charged with 3 counts of murder and 10 of attempted murder. He is next scheduled to appear in court in November.
Good news for Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that Kyiv has received its first delivery of F-16 fighter jets today. Can long-awaited jets help the current difficult situation on the Ukrainian battlefields? Well, joining us from Kyiv with the details is our Ukraine correspondent Oscar Taji. Good evening, Oz. So what more can you tell us about the delivery of this aircraft?
Good evening. Yeah, as you said, this is something that Zelensky's government has been asking for basically 2 years, more than 2 years. They needed these fighter jets at the beginning of the war. And now today, Zelensky proudly standing in front of them, announcing that they've joined the Air Force. He says that it is part of now a new phase of development for the Ukrainian Air Force and the armed forces. This should help in trying to deal with some of the bigger problems that they've got at the moment. Particularly at the moment, Russia is firing a lot of glide bombs at Ukraine, into northern Ukraine, from air bases just across the way. Now, Ukraine has been arguing for some time that the ability to strike targets that are firing these missiles would help them. They hope that the F-16s will try and help close some of that gap between Russia and Ukraine and provide them the ability to gain not maybe air superiority, but dominance in certain parts of the country when needed. The number of F-16s is still pretty low. Zelensky did make a point of thanking the countries that sent this batch, namely the Netherlands, Denmark and the United States. But these are still only just a few that have arrived. There's still more promised. And Ukraine needs a lot more in the Air Force sector to really be able to reach any kind of parity with Russia. So it's a small step, a very important and symbolic one, given how many times it was said that it was impossible to envisage F-16s ever arriving in Ukraine. It's taken over 2 years, but they have finally arrived. And the Ukrainian government is going to be very, very happy that they've managed to secure those aircraft.
And hopefully more F-16s are coming. That was Oscar Taji reporting from Kyiv. Thank you so much, Oza, and of course stay safe. Now, with only 92 days left until the vote, the US presidential election is becoming more and more brutal. Donald Trump has turned to a new narrative during the US presidential election campaign. He is now questioning Kamala Harris' racial identity. Let's take a look at the latest in the race for the White House.
Donald Trump appeared at a campaign rally in Atlanta, Georgia on Saturday alongside his running mate, J.D. Vance. Events in cities with large black populations are part of a broader effort to court black voters, whom the Trump campaign has been struggling to resonate with.
I'm thrilled to be back in the great state of Georgia. I love Georgia. With thousands of proud, hardworking American patriots. Crazy Kamala, ultra-left, you know that. If Harris wins, a never-ending stream of illegal alien rapists, MS-13 animals, and child predators will flood into your communities. If I win on day one, we will begin the largest deportation operation in American history.
Before the rally, Trump attended a roundtable meeting with representatives of black businesses in Atlanta. This comes after the former president made a number of disparaging remarks questioning Harris's racial identity, which caused widespread backlash, particularly among minority voters.
She was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
Many Democrat voters have been appalled by this statement, and Trump's own supporters are divided on this line of attack.
I don't think that's going to do him any good, but she's a chameleon. The border, we've got bigger issues to worry about what she claims to be.
I don't know, but she clearly is not a black woman.
I think she is black when it's convenient for her, and I think that's what his message was, is that she uses it when it's convenient.
Come on, y'all.
On Friday, the chair of the Democratic National Committee announced that Harris had secured enough votes from delegates to become the party's nominee. She is expected to reveal her vice presidential pick next week.
Alarming news from Poland now. Police report that fentanyl, a powerful opioid responsible for approximately 300 deaths a day in the US, is becoming a more common sight in Poland. 75 poisonings have been reported in the country since the start of the year.
On Saturday, local police confirmed the detention of 3 people suspected of trafficking fentanyl. The detainees include a resident of Gdańsk as well as 2 residents of the town of Żuromin. Fentanyl is a pharmaceutical drug that can be prescribed by a doctor to treat severe pain. The opioid is also illegally manufactured and sold by criminal gangs.
The size of a grain of sand of carfentanil can actually kill a person. And it's actually an elephant tranquilizer, so it's intended to, tranquilize very large animals. And the likelihood of death from carfentanil is incredibly high.
Fentanyl has recently become the #1 leading cause of overdose deaths among Americans aged 18 to 45. U.S. opioid crisis emerged as a result of lax regulation and aggressive marketing campaigns by one of the country's largest opioid manufacturers. Our reporter Gabriela Fesnak spoke with psychiatrist Dr. Jerzy Pobocha to ask about the possibility of a similar opioid crisis spreading to Poland.
In Poland, we managed to avoid such a crisis because there are no such manufacturers, and fentanyl is still incredibly hard to get. This is a barrier that protects potential drug addicts from getting addicted to fentanyl.
For this poll, sky is not the limit. Sławosz Uznański is scheduled to begin training in Houston on Monday ahead of his 2025 space mission. Let's now take a closer look at his story.
3, 2, 1, ignition.
Soon, a second Pole will go into space. Sławosz Uznański, a 40-year-old Polish engineer, is headed for Houston to train ahead of his upcoming mission to the International Space Station in 2025.
I'm incredibly excited to move to Houston. It's the birthplace of NASA and space technology. We all know the iconic line, "Houston, we've got a problem." Well, I hope there will be no problems during my mission.
Uznański is scheduled to stay at the International Space Station for about 2 weeks. The soon-to-be astronaut spoke about the training he will undergo before the mission.
In Houston, I will mainly be training at NASA to learn about the different space station systems, how things work, what kind of experiments are conducted there.
Going to space, Uznański will follow in the footsteps of Mirosław Hermaszewski, who spent 8 days aboard the Soviet Soyuz 30 spacecraft back in 1978. TVP World had a chance to speak to Uznański a while back at the Impact CEE conference in Poznań. Our reporter Alex Sumlinski asked for advice he would give to Polish teens who might one day want to follow the same path.
To young people, often I say, choose what you really like doing and really build your experience to be good at it. When you like doing something, you don't really feel when the time passes by. And at a certain moment, you realize your expertise is one, leading expertise on the market.
TVP World will be keeping a close eye on this story and bring you all the latest about Uznański's mission on the International Space Station.
The Paris Olympics have been pumping out memes faster than it takes some track and field stars to get to the finish line. From Turkish shooter Yusuf Dikec to a Japanese equestrian Olympian selfie, here's our choice of some of the most viral memes from this year's Olympic Games.
Italian Olympic gymnast Giorgia Villa has gone viral for her cheese partnership. The photos from 2021 resurfaced on social media after the 21-year-old helped her team win the silver medal in Tuesday's all-around final. Next is the Turkish shooter Yusuf Dikec, who became a social media sensation for his hitman style at the Paris Olympics. Dikec garnered attention for competing at the Olympics without any specialized equipment. He proved to be more than just a meme, however, because he took home silver. South Korean pistol shooter Kim Ye has gone viral across social media for her stylish demeanor after she clinched silver in the women's 10-meter air pistol event. The internet also can't get enough of Japanese equestrian star Yoshiaki Oiwa's adorable selfie with his horse, MGH Grafton Street. Oiwa posted a selfie of him smiling as he held up his bronze medal next to his steed. The adorable picture went viral on X, gaining over 300,000 likes as of August 1st. And that's how you become an Olympic legend.
And it was also a good day for Polish athletes in Paris as Alicja Konieczek broke Poland's record in 3,000 meters steeplechase and qualified for the finals. What's more, Julia Szeremeta made history as she became the first Polish boxer to win an Olympic medal since 1992 in the quarterfinals of the women's 57 kilograms category. And now on to our interview. The biggest prisoner swap between Russia and the wider West since the Cold War has been heralded as success by both Washington and the Kremlin. The move, however, sparked some controversies in the West, as many politicians in Poland and Germany are not happy with who exactly had been released. It also seems that the prisoner exchange has become one of the hot topics of the US presidential campaign. And to talk about it, we're joined by Tanya Dame, professor from DePaul University College of Law, expert in human rights and international relations, professor of Columbia University. Right. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you
for having me.
Thank you for accepting our invitation. So, first of all, why has the US decided to go on with the swap right now, in the very heat of the presidential campaign?
Well, actually, it doesn't happen on a timeline that's convenient. I can point to history when the 52 hostages held in Iran during the Reagan campaign, and they were released on the day of inauguration, January 20th, 1981, when after he had defeated President Carter. So there is a precedent for this happening during a campaign. Actually, according to reporting here in the United States, the effort to negotiate this extraordinary swap began in 2022 when Brittany Griner, the WNBA star, was arrested for having cannabis in her luggage. And that's when the effort began by the Biden administration. But apparently it went off schedule, or what their objectives was to get Alexei Navalny released from prison, but he was killed in 2024. So they had to go back to the drawing board, so to speak, because Paul Whelan did not come home with Brittany Griner, and there was great disappointment about that. I think what's also notable about this swap is that the majority of these people that were taken prisoner and held captive are journalists. And it's very clear that Vladimir Putin has complete disregard for them, but they were more valuable to him alive than dead. I mean, he's been known to assassinate journalists. For example, Anna Politskaya was murdered in 2006 in an elevator in her home in Moscow. So he's earned a brutal reputation, honestly.
Right. So on one side we have journalists, on the other we have spies and murderers. But as you mentioned, the Carter-Reagan era and the release of hostages from Iran, it actually took place during the presidential campaign. We've seen Kamala Harris welcoming hostages back to the US. Now, how can it help her chances, and was she somehow involved in negotiations?
Yes, indeed. She worked with the Germans on the release of Putin's assassin, who was clearly very much in Putin's interest. I mean, he really wanted this person to be taken, returned to Russia. So the effort was to leverage that as much as possible and get as many people out as possible. And she worked directly with the Chancellor of Germany and had attended 3 Munich security conferences and had developed a really strong relationship with the German government. And I would add that she began speaking to Yulia Navalny, the widow of Alexei Navalny, and on the evening when the hostages were released, Vice President Harris called her to notify her. So she did play a significant role, and to the credit of the Biden administration, they gave her public acknowledgement for her role in this exchange.
Which, of course, came under criticism from Donald Trump. So let's listen to the former U.S. president now.
I'd like to congratulate Vladimir Putin for having made yet another great deal. Did you see the deal we made? Now, look, we want to get people in. You know, we got 59 hostages. I never paid anything. They released some of the greatest killers anywhere in the world, some of the most evil killers they got, and we got our people back. But, boy, we make some horrible, horrible deals, and it's nice to say we got them back, but does that set a bad precedent?
Now, is it a bad precedent in fact, and can it encourage Moscow to, capture, to jail more innocent people in hope for yet another prisoner exchange, which would include the high-profile spies?
Well, I think actually Donald Trump's ego was bruised because he proclaimed on the campaign trail that on day one of his presidency, after he would be elected this year, he would get Evan Gershkovich out. And Vladimir Putin decided to work with the intermediaries, including the Slovenian government and the Germans, because he wanted to get his man out now. And I think that really bruised Donald Trump's ego. He is quite a braggart about many things that he has never accomplished. So, there's a lot of comments by national security officials saying you don't want to do this on a regular basis, but this is the most significant swap in decades. This isn't something that happens every day or every year. So, Donald Trump's ego's bruised, and he's going to complain about it because that's the kind of politics he pursues.
Well, that's the presidential campaign. But I'm wondering how are Russians presenting the swab, and was it really a small or maybe a big victory for Vladimir Putin after all?
Well, I'm not surprised by welcoming home, con men and assassins. This leader of this autocracy is like a mafios office. He's like a mafia king, and he directs people to make hits on his behalf. He's KGB. He's not military. He doesn't have a military background, and he's like a godfather of a mafia-held captive government. And of course he's going to celebrate their return, because in this world right now and during this age, up is down and down is up, good is bad and bad is bad is good. And I think that's what you're seeing. And it actually is kind of reminiscent of triumphalism, the return of prisoners in this way. So it's very much in your face, and this is something he can show to the public just how powerful he is.
Right. Lastly, I just have to ask you about the potential VPs for Kamala Harris. So far, we've heard of 4 governors. That's Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, Andy Beshear of Kentucky, Tim Walz of Minnesota, J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, and member of Biden's cabinet, that's Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary. So which candidate will it be? Maybe we've forgotten about someone.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would say right now the top 2 contenders are Joshua Shapiro, the governor of the state of Pennsylvania, because it's a swing state, and right now Vice President Harris is trailing by 4 points. It's been pretty consistent across the polling. And I would say the second most likely contender is Mark Kelly, the U.S. Senator from Arizona, because it's a swing state, and he can help bring Arizona in as well as Nevada. So I think it gets down to the politics of the Electoral College, as perhaps people don't know, but you don't have a direct vote in America. It goes to also obtaining 270 electoral votes to be able to become president of the United States. And so Pennsylvania is very important, as is Arizona. Joe Biden won Arizona and won Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania is probably the way you get to the presidency for Kamala Harris. So we'll see, but I think it's Kelly or Shapiro right now.
So we're still not sure about the identity of the future VP candidate for Kamala Harris, but we know one thing for sure: it will be a white male. That's what we know. Tanya Domi.
It's a race to the finish. Yes, 13 weeks to go. It's almost like a European snap polls election. It's extraordinarily different for American voters, but the Democratic fortunes have turned a 180-degree, and she is really she's really performing. Over $300 million raised in the first 2 weeks. There's a lot of happiness and joy, and people are really excited. So it is going to be a fascinating election.
Fascinating indeed it will be. Professor Tanya Domi, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you for watching. That is all for now, and stay with us, well, for much more here on TVP World.